So I think all this is an interesting segue to Jemele Hill, which will kind of get us into ESPN in general. And again, all these things are so related, from what the individual is doing to the employer to now the companies and everything else. And we can talk about Trump and all that. But Jemele Hill's an interesting one. I would love to have her on the show. She's welcome to come on. She said, this thing about Trump being a white supremacist. Now, I don't agree with the premise, but I do defend her right to say what she wants, of course. But that comes with the risk that you're talking about. Your employer may not be that thrilled. Then a couple weeks go by, and then she's actively telling people to boycott ESPN's advertisers. That is, to me, that is as fireable an offense as you could possibly have as an employee of a company. Telling the people who pay the bills.
They don't, I think goes to a lack of comprehension about how you're paid, right? Because ultimately, I understand, you have to figure out how the business model is funded. And she said boycott AT&T. AT&T provides 15% of the revenue of ESPN through DirecTV plus all their sundry other advertisements that they pay. To me, the Jemele Hill mess was set in place by a prior decision, which was a wrong one. And I'm a First Amendment absolutist. We said before, I love First Amendment and boobs. And I think what's a little bit scary about the First Amendment and why a lot of people follow us is in a modern social media era, even if you're off your job, can be fired for something that you put on Facebook or that you put on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat. It's an instant from being no name at all to being virally famous. And that's a great book. You probably have read it. So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I think it was John Ronson.
I know it. I haven't read it.
Oh, it's so good. But a lot of it is what we live, right? And so it's fine for people like you or me because we have a little bit of public profile. So if somebody decides, Clay Travis said something controversial and comes after me, well, there's people who know me and are going to defend me. If you're just a regular person, there's probably not very many people who are going to defend you. It turns into a mob really quickly. And so I think this is emblematic of larger society as a whole. I think it's a little bit scary that people are constantly being judged by what they say on social media as it pertains to their job. I don't know why everybody suddenly works in HR. And our immediate reaction when somebody says something you don't like, whatever political side you're on, is that person should be fired, right?
Isn't it funny, do you wake up and you look at Twitter and I'm like, all right, who today that I've never heard of before
is going to be a star?
Is going to either a star or just going to be publicly shamed or destroyed,
tarred and feathered. Yes. It's our modern...
So wait, what was the decision
So
before?
The first decision that was wrong was Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling went on his private Facebook page when he was not on air. And I make this distinction. I think some people follow it, some people don't. If Jemele Hill goes on 6 p.m. Sports Center and she says, the Rockets won last night, and oh, by the way, Donald Trump's a white supremacist and all of his supporters are racist, she should be fired. Because that's ESPN using their method of distribution to reach all of their audience, and people go on there expecting that they're not going to hear about Donald Trump being a white supremacist. And the same thing would be true of Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling got fired because he had done several things. He's a conservative, but he had said he shared a meme which basically ridiculed the North Carolina transgender bathroom debate. And it was like a popular meme on the internet that lots of people were sharing, something about a guy who was dressed up like a woman, let him use the bathroom with your daughter, whatever. And again, I don't have an issue with I think this is a great example of how we manufacture issues that shouldn't exist. Somehow in the 60s, the 70s, after the Civil Rights Movement, the rest of the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, people who are dressed like one sex use that bathroom. And we've never had an issue.
Trans people have been going to the bathroom. I haven't heard a lot of problems about it.
We've never had any issue. The example I use is we don't have somebody Crocodile Dundee gender checking groins outside, right? So that's a Sheila.
Give it a chance.
And maybe so. And so I don't think his opinion was irrational. I don't think it was outlandish. I think it was certainly permissible because in his private life, that's what he believes. They fired him for it. And I think once they fired him for that, they established there are private opinions that ESPN employees can have which don't allow them to have public opinions on the world of sports. Curt Schilling wasn't fired because he did a bad job analyzing whether the Red Sox should change relief pitchers, right? He wasn't fired because he said something on the air that was bad for ESPN's business. He was fired because people decided to follow his private political opinions and deem them to be unacceptable. My issue with ESPN is not politics. It's that they have decided that only left-wing politics are permissible. So when Jemele Hill says that the president is a white supremacist, that his supporters are all racist, and that everybody that surrounds him is also a white supremacist, including, by the way, potentially his daughter who is Jewish, and his I don't think there are that
many. His wife who is an immigrant.
Yes. I don't think there are that many people who would marry an immigrant and also be very comfortable with having grandchildren who are Jewish, that are just fundamentally vile human beings who judge based on race, gender, religion, whatever. So when she gives that opinion, they have set the precedent of you could be fired for a political opinion. They don't do anything for that opinion. They basically rap her on her knuckles, say she shouldn't have done that. And it clearly establishes what I've been writing and talking about for a long time, which is ESPN has one standard of speech for left-wing political belief and another standard for right-wing. And to me, that's emblematic not just of ESPN, but of our culture as a whole when it comes frequently to the world of sports media, which I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't think you're an awful human being if you disagree with the fact that Charlotte has a rule about transgender bathroom, right? I think it's stupid that we end up in this debate because, again, it's a fundamentally artificial debate designed to play to the bases of the left and the right and create conflict where we don't need it. But I don't think you having one opinion or the other there is an awful one. I think it's an artificial construct. And I don't think that ESPN can make the decision, oh, because of this, we're pulling our games, our all-star game out of the city of Charlotte.
Yeah.
And the same thing of the ACC and all these other sports media leviathans that did that. And then you're also, by the way, playing games in Mexico, which has much worse of a human rights issues and violations when it comes to gays. NBA's got games in China, which doesn't even allow people to get on, like the internet and use it freely.
We're building, or not we, but Qatar is building the World Cup stadium for whatever it is.
With slave labor.
With slave labor, literally.
Yes. And also all these, it's not just athletics, by the way, it's all these people who are musicians. They come out and say, oh, we're not going to play in North Carolina, but then they're playing in Latvia,
Right.
literally, then they are playing for Saudi Arabia, which just now allowed women to drive cars,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a artificial outrage machine that isn't rooted in any kind of reality, and I think sports has become one of the driving forces of it.
So how do we take some of this back?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I think we're doing it. I think conversations like this are actually doing it, and as we were saying
I think there's
before,
lots of people taking the red pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But where does this put you even politically, actually?
I don't know.
Because if we were to go through a couple of things, you
Yes.
rifled up a couple.
You can ask me questions.
Yeah, let's
answer everything completely honest. Like
No,
you can ask me any question, I'll give you the complete answer.
I never give my guests a question beforehand, but I had no doubt.
Because that's one of the things that I get criticized about. Like I've turned down my own television show to be able to say exactly what I think, right? I think the most illegitimate, like you can attack my beliefs as much as you want. I'm wide open to that. The most illegitimate thing that people say about me is Clay Travis is just saying that because he wants to get attention or because he's trying to sell to a market. No, I have literally turned down millions of dollars to be able to say exactly what I believe. My ability to tell you exactly what I think is, to me, the most important thing that I do. And to the extent, like everybody sells out on some level, like I don't know how many people who are in my industry would turn down their own television show so they can still sell everybody what they think about Game of Thrones, which I was told I couldn't talk about, as well as every political belief I've ever had. Yeah. So fire away. I mean, I think this is kind of fascinating.
Well, just for the record, I've had at least 3 offers for networks for more money than I'm making, and I've said no to, because this, as you said, you have a home studio. I have a home studio. Nobody is controlling us. There is nothing in our ear.
Yes.
It doesn't mean we're going to be right all the time, but what it means is we're going to be real, or at least as real as humanly possible.
So much bullshit in America right now that I think what matters more than anything else, regardless of what you believe, is that you are authentically in what you believe. And that, people who are watching this conversation between the two of us, I think they'll say, wow, like that sounds like a real conversation that real people are having, as opposed to, like you said, somebody in our ear talking for 3 minutes and telling us what to say and creating artificial debate.
So I sense that you're probably right where I am in that I think you're probably a classical liberal. I don't know that I know you voted for Gary Johnson this past time, as I did too. It was the most sad little check off of anything I've ever done. I've had him on the show. He's a perfectly nice guy, but he's a terrible candidate. Okay. Again, we both voted for...
My hope was that he was going to be a lot better than he was. Or that there would have been a viable option there, as opposed to the 2 most hated candidates that have ever been nominated by major political parties in our country's history.
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was the libertarian candidate, obviously. So I sense that you're somewhere between probably a classical liberal and a libertarian. I don't even think defining them so perfectly is that important. But you mentioned a little bit of your liberal cred. So you want to just knock off a couple of issues?
I'm pro-choice.
Okay,
I think that you should have that right if you're a woman to decide whether or not to have a baby.
I'm begrudgingly pro. I'll even go further than you on that. I really struggle with it, but at the moment I am pro-choice.
I am, when it comes to the death penalty, because I've worked in the criminal justice system, I think the death penalty presumes a level of certitude that does not exist. I think it presumes that we are flawless. I think we're all flawed no matter what we do for a living. I think there probably have been innocent people put to death for crimes they did not commit. And I think if you or I were accused of murder, we wouldn't get the death penalty because we're wealthy enough to afford good attorneys. So I think if you are poor and likely to be not represented by a quality attorney, you're more likely to get the death penalty. So I think that's an unfair aspect of it as well.
Okay, so against the death penalty,
Yes.
pro-choice. So far, so good. You're for gay marriage? We got that one
Gay
already?
marriage.
Okay.
I am. I would say I wish there was a lot less tax. I am pro markets. I think one thing you learn early on, at least for me, when I went to law school and I went to work at a firm and started representing big companies, I was blown away by the false and just crap lawsuits that are filed all day long, every day. Mm-hmm. There are good lawsuits that need to be filed against big companies. The vast majority don't. And so I don't believe that companies are evil. I believe in markets. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I believe in the marketplace of ideas. It's funny. I got a D in First Amendment law when I was at, Vanderbilt Law School.
You're making up for it. You're
making up for it now. I never would have believed that I would end up, as fascinated by the law and studying it now. When I was 22, it was the third year, 25, I guess, the third year, my final semester. I didn't buy books and I didn't go to class. I was ready to just take the bar exam and be out. And so I got a D on that First Amendment exam. But I wish now I could go back in time and more seriously study it, because I've ended up doing it as an adult, but I wish I had gotten that foundation. I wish I paid more attention when I was 25. So kids out there, pay more attention in class, even if you're thinking I'm never going to use this, because who makes a living talking about the First Amendment? Somehow, probably of anybody at Vanderbilt Law School, I bet I spend more time talking about it than anybody does.
Well, it's funny. Right before you started, I said to you that I went to SUNY Binghamton, and we didn't have a great athletic program or anything, which I would have been very into. So I really just smoked pot and played video games for 4 years. I was a poli-sci major, so I guess I parlayed that into something. But yeah, I go to these schools now, and I was at Clemson last week, I was at Harvard 2 weeks ago, and I go to all these schools, and I meet all these kids who are so in the thick of it, figuring out what they think and talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, man, you have such a leg up on the world. It's so great. It's inspiring.
Well, I'm impressed by the number of college kids that are there's a lot of bullshit going on right now.
Yeah.
And they're really kind of steeped in it because they are on a college campus right now and they see this, what I call is it's like a modern day royalty. Because you'll hear, back in the day, you would hear, if you were in England, somebody would say, I'm the third Earl Dorchester, they run all the different titles as a way to legitimize whatever their opinion is.
Yeah.
Nowadays, on college campus, somebody's like, I'm a black, lesbian, transgender, before they even say their opinion.
You got to have a limp, too.
Yeah, right.
The limp,
as a black, lesbian, transgender, male, female, whatever you want to say, before they get to their opinion. I'm like, why do I care about the prelude? Is your argument good or is it bad? And we were talking about this off air too. When you get attacked by an accusation of something that you're not, to me, I just kind of smile because it means I won the argument.
So when you saw that piece, it was Politico, right?
Yeah.
So when you saw that piece, as I said, I saw the headline,
Yeah.
I knew I didn't even have to read it, and I could already see a little bit of traction picking up. And again, as you said earlier, it's great when you have people defending you.
Yes.
Because it allows you to breathe, it allows you to move on. We could spend all day long.
It was a 5,000, so it's funny, there's Daily Beast did a 5,000 word piece on me, and I talked to them. And then Politico did a 5,000 word piece, and I talked to them.
What was the title, or what did they exactly say, that you're the
alt-right's hero, or something like that?
Now again, we just laid out some of your liberal or libertarian cred.
Yes.
I have yet to hear you. I assume at some point you're going to burst out with some sort of racist diatribe. But I mean, again, it's important to frame it that way because I see this. I mean, I've seen it happen to me. I've had several articles written in the same. I'm further to the extreme right than Breitbart. I mean, just abject drivel. And that's why we lay out what we say, and then it's like they don't care. They don't care.
People don't listen. They don't care. They already have their preconceived notions, and so.
I mean the writers. I'm talking about the writers and the editors.
Yeah,
in this
they
case.
came and they spent, the guy came and he spent the day with me. I start every morning, for people who don't know, at 4 a.m. I get up really early because I've got an early morning sports talk show that I do from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And then I do a show also on Periscope and Facebook Live at 3 o'clock Eastern every day. And then I write in between that time. I do all this. I'm fortunate, I own 100% of my company. Like you, the business side of things allows me to be as outspoken as I am in a way, frankly, that I wouldn't be if I was reliant upon being an employee of a major media company.
Yeah. Do you find, just pause for a sec, do you find that you're able to put these principles that you talk about into practice for your business too?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that's very cool for me. The things that I believe in when I talk about low taxes and treating people right and all of those things, those are the ways that I operate my business. So it makes the views that I talk about stronger, actually.
Yes. I don't think there's anybody that I've ever worked with who would come out and say a negative word about me. And that's like, my wife says that I'm unique in that people attacking me doesn't bother me. And it's almost like if you watch football, defensive backs get burned, give up a touchdown pass. The next drive, they're right back up on the line of scrimmage talking trash. And you have to have no memory to play that position. I don't like hold grudges. I just kind of let things go. I'm very like kind of karmic in that way. And I don't think you could do my job if you sat around and worried. Like my wife says, you can get 10 things negative said about you and you remember the positive. Right? I mean, and I do think there's a little bit of truth to that. But yeah, like I always said, if people who know me,
wait, I think you might have just said that backwards, or we do this very differently.
Yeah.
Does she say that you can say 10 things negative and you remember the positive, or the other way around?
No,
because for me, it's like I get 10 positives, but the only one I remember
no,
is
I'm
the
exact
negative.
opposite.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Like
so you are doing something right. I'm going to work on that.
It doesn't really register.
Yeah.
I almost feel like when I do the radio show, it's my way of sitting down and getting to have therapy without actually having to pay for therapy.
That's incredible, and that's very the reverse of what a lot of public people are, because I have so many people that come on and talk about that. We forget all the good stuff, and it's just the bad stuff.
I don't necessarily marinate. It's almost like it's just noise.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact, there's nothing that somebody's going to say to me that's going to change my opinion about something. And that's one of the funniest things about Twitter is I'll make an argument, and then somebody will be like, oh, did you think about X, Y, or Z? And yeah, I did. And it used to, like with my wife, it used to be an issue because she's really smart, obviously, too. And I would talk about her with an opinion, and I'd ask her opinion, and I might not take her advice. And she would say, why did you ask me my opinion and then not take it? It's because I want to talk to as many smart people as I can, make sure that I've considered every angle. There's a great line from another Tennessean who used to say, Davy Crockett used to say, be sure you're right, then go ahead. It's actually pretty good advice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you think through everything in a rigorous manner, by the time I go public with my opinion, I've kind of thought through it. So, like I think that in general, there are very few people who actually look at the facts and apply them to a set of principles. So I defended Jemele Hill. I said she shouldn't get suspended. Same principle that I applied when I said with Curt Schilling, he shouldn't get suspended. Most people decide whether or not they like speech based on whether they agree with it. Colin Kaepernick, another example.
It's the easiest thing to do. We're all for free speech, and then
somebody says something you don't like. But imagine Colin Kaepernick takes a knee and says that the reason he's doing it is because he opposes gay marriage. Nobody in San Francisco or on the left wing is going to have an issue at all if the 49ers cut him, right? That's his political speech. It actually makes sense because the United States flag represents gay marriage being allowed now, whereas the United States flag doesn't represent, based on the actions taken by the government, the idea that police should be able to kill minorities with impunity. In fact, the exact opposite, which is what I said earlier. Like he's protesting something the government's already trying to take action against.
So all this said, so now these articles get written. So the Politico piece, and again, people defended you and all that stuff. So basically you're just saying you just got to let it roll off your back and not do anything, right? Because I mean, a lot of people ask me about this thing because I think that there's so many people that watch the two of us or listen to us that want to get in this fight, but they're afraid because they don't have the public profile that we have or whatever it is. They don't have the Twitter followers that are going to back them up and all that. So I think it's an important thing, like to discuss how we navigate through that.
Well, so I appreciate, first of all, everybody who stood up and said that article was bullshit. What was disappointing to me is I brought that guy into my house.
Yep, same thing.
He spent all day with me. I said I started at 4 a.m. He spent all day with me. He saw exactly what I did. I don't worry about what I say because people who are watching and listening to this right now, I probably said 40,000 words.
I've been very triggered the entire time, by the way.
But I say so much that it's hard to pull one thing out and say, oh my God, Clay Travis said this. Now, boobs and First Amendment might change because that exposed me to an audience that didn't know I existed. But I let him talk to my producer of my radio show and my wife. And I think that he chose, I know, talked to my wife for a half hour and he takes the two most negative things that she says and turns it into like a story. He takes things that my producer said that were not true and he wrote about it. And I think for those people who don't have a public persona already, I feel worse about a situation like that. And I also feel like in the future, as more writers are writing about me, to the extent that I even want to participate in them, I need to just pull my own phone out, hire a transcript person, and let them put every word that I said on the record and go read the transcript, as opposed to pulling out. Because I think, this, I don't think the average person does. The quotes that you choose tells more about you frequently than it does about the person you're trying to profile. So I was hopeful. Politico's a big name place. I thought maybe they'll do a really nuanced, intelligent portrayal about the conflict between sports and politics and this guy who has somehow found himself in the center of them, who used to be in Democratic politics, now I call myself a radical moderate, somewhere in the middle, which I wish there were more people like us, and I think there are a lot like us.
There are.
But they don't get paid attention to because they're not on the fringes creating a stir every day. And so I thought maybe this would be a really good profile. And I was just disappointed because it was lazy. It was a profile that was written with preconceived notions already in mind. But within 2 days, it's water under the bridge. And I think the reason is because the reason why I do get involved in those is people think when they share something and say this guy's an asshole, that all their friends are going to agree with him. What I have found is if you go on social media and you say Clay Travis is the worst human being ever, 70% of the people who follow you may agree. 30% of people will click on it, they'll be like, you know what? Kind of agree with a little bit of what he's saying. I might not be saying it publicly, but there are so many people out there who don't feel comfortable saying things. And then that 30% turns into my allies. The 70% who you're sharing, like if somebody already hates me, 70% of their audience is probably going to hate me otherwise. But where we've grown is not by people it's by word of mouth, people who like us sharing it with their audience, right? But it's also by people who hate us sharing what I do. And then some of their people that they think they're natural allies, they might even be talking with you at a dinner party being like, I hate Clay Travis. But in reality, you know, they're reading the articles. They might be sharing them with other friends who are like-minded. It's like you have to hide sometimes.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is that when they do it to a guy like you, and they'll be like, he's this alt-right, racist, whatever, then you read the whole article, you can't get a quote where it actually said any of that. And then actually they do push people more your way. So it's sort of this, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and again, it just comes back to if you're attacking somebody instead of their ideas, you lose. The first person to decide, Clay Travis reminds me of Nazis, that person lost the argument, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that is the default of the left now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you not wearing the Nazi hat because you came in and you were just off the plane.
And by the way, it's cyclical.
Yeah. It'll flip.
Back when Bill Maher got fired, it was if you weren't a hardcore patriot, the right is defending free speech right now. But the great thing about America is as long as free speech is protected, there's always going to be people like you and I who may not fit particular political disciplines, and all the people out there listening and watching right now, but understand that our most important right is the right to disagree.
Absolutely, that's how you end an interview, and I truly feel like we barely scratched the surface.
I could sit here all day with you. I love what you do. You do great work. I appreciate you having me in.
Thanks. Well, I feel the same way, and it's like I feel like we just had to do just like some cleanup. So next time you're in LA, there's so many other things we can get into. You were talking about Disney CEO Bob Iger running for president. You've been talking about it for a long time, and I think you're right.
Everybody's catching up with it now.
And a whole bunch of other stuff. And I know you're running to Corolla. I'm doing Corolla tomorrow, so don't totally blow his mind. Leave a little free speech for me. For more on Clay, tune in to Outkick the coverage on Fox Sports Radio and follow him on the Twitter @ClayTravis.